What?
Oh, no sound.
Blame, that's it. Try again. Hello and welcome. I won't be bothered again. We're fine. I was just saying, we never actually get done for copyright for using that music. We do for everything else I do, absolutely. But that particular one, we get away with every time. So yes, good on you. Hello and welcome. So here we are on the 5th of August. There you go. Apparently I need to restart my computer. Let's just simply say we won't bother right now because that's not a good idea. It does it to me every time we fire up. I must do an update one day. Anyway, we trust you're all doing very well. Obviously, we're all quite excited because, well, one of the crew is on his way this direction. He's staying at Mr. Buller's tonight.
He is, yes.
Yes. You got his little bed all made up and ready for him?
We have, yes.
Bless, definitely.
Yes.
And John's not boycotting us. His Flory Models logo's fallen off his top.
Oh,
Yes.
It does look like he's put a bit of red tape on it.
I'll have to get a Sharpie and...
Yeah, well, it's all right. I've got a white one here. We can scribble it back in. You'll be absolutely fine. No problem at all. So, anyway, all good. So, anyway, John, are you okay? How's things this week?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Very good. John's out of lip sync. Is he just with me or is everyone else getting him about 2 seconds out?
Yeah.
He was fine before we went live, but there we go.
Yeah, really bad, isn't he?
Yes, definitely. And hold on, I've just got to move Nathan just a bit. He's got a bit at the bottom and my OCD is terrible for this type of stuff. There we go. He's fine now. He's got a little bit at the bottom. Anyway, Nathan, how are you? Good week?
I'm good. I'm a new filter week.
Do you know what? You beat me to it. I was just about to say, and what's the occasion for a new filter?
I just kind of had a little bit of a rejig. So now I've decided I'm just going to spray in that direction and keep my filter nice and clean.
Well, that's what Andy's been doing for the last 5 years. Andy's been spraying at his carpet.
It's the new way.
Yes, that's it. How to keep your filter clear. Instead of like doing it this way, you're just spraying into the air.
It's almost chrome shiny. It's gorgeous.
It is. Is that a genuine one you've got in there?
It's my last legit genuine one.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough. Jesus.
But after this, I'll be winging it.
Robbing me, because that's what the others all do. Definitely. Anyway, it looks very nice and very clean in there. Are you ready to start a new project, does this mean, or you just had a general clear up?
I'm ready to spray my Phantom.
Very nice. Cool. What Phantom's that one?
This is an F4F, a German one.
Hold on, he's on the wrong camera. There we go. Nice.
So it's going to be a green and grey early 70s Phantom.
Cool. And whose kit's that?
This is the Revell. What's frightening about this kit is it's year 2000. But that makes it a 21-year-old kit, which just makes me feel just frightening when you think what 21-year-olds,
Yeah.
It's an adult kit. It's grown up, but it's all right. It's in that classic Revell era, and I think their kits are really, really good.
Yes. So is that recessed panel lines and all the details?
Yeah, it's recessed panel lines, little smidge of filler here and there.
Nice.
But I think this stands up to, once it's together and you've done a bit of filling on the intakes, which is normal, isn't it? I think that stands up to anything that they're putting out these days, to be honest.
Hey, hold on. Why's Nathan moved? Who's dropped out? Have we lost John? Sorry, we've lost one of the team. Where's John gone? Lynn's on Netflix again. Hold on, he's coming back. Here he is. Sorry.
I don't know why it's playing out. It's normally pretty good.
Speak again, John.
I said, I don't
no,
know
you're
why it's
perfect now.
playing
You're
up.
crystal clear. Is Lynn on Netflix?
It could be.
There we go. Sorry, Dave. Go on, carry on.
All right. So I think this kit is. I mean, the irony is you can't get this kit now. It's dead hard to get, but they re-release it every 2 or 3 years. But I love it. I love that kit.
Hey, anyway, forget that. Look, the sun. I don't know if you guys can tell, because obviously the sun this time of the year is there for me as it sets. And I can see sun. We're all lit in here. So summer's back on, everyone. After the weather we've had today for the barbecue. Hold on, it's going in. It's all right. The cloud's coming back over. But literally my window is just lit up with the sun. It's the first time all day.
Keith Water says in chat, He loved that kit as a kid.
It's not
21
that
years old. Who are you kidding?
Yeah, dream on, Keith. There's no way you're 21.
Wish I was 21
Or
again.
ever a kid when that was 21 years ago.
Yes. Nice. But it just goes to show as well that, you know, a lot of people think Revell, or they don't think a lot of Revell. But actually, if you go through their catalogue, we're going to have to do a show on them purely.
Yeah.
Because they've got some
Yeah.
really, really good stuff. And their 72nd scale stuff, some of it is actually top notch and is the best you'll get in scale. You know, and obviously they do a lot of kits that a lot of manufacturers don't touch. You know, I've often championed their F15 until of late, because obviously the Great Wall Hobbies has probably superseded it, but that's a great kit in 48th. And say Rafales, 72nd Typhoons, things like that, 72nd Tornadoes, you know, so you say don't write them off. They've actually got some really good stuff in their catalogue.
They're really good for the sort of modern jets.
Very nice. Cool. And Andy, how are you?
Fine, thank you. I've been doing lots of invoicing and stuffs for kits that we've been sending out, and this is, even though it doesn't look it because it looks in bits.
Yes.
This is now ready for paint. This part is anyway. All the wheels are all sort of like all ready and waiting, and the tracks are metal tracks, so they're sort of like ready for burnishing and going together. But yeah, so I painted the rear decks because I wanted to paint the inside of the engine covers.
Yes.
It's because it's difficult to get through the photo etch to do it, so that's why that's all painted up ready. So that's going to be painted green, and that's going to be painted desert colour, because I'm going to chip it right back. It's going to be proper beaten, and so I've taken the front mud guards off, and one of the rear mud guards is off, and it's going to be proper beaten and weathered. That's the idea.
Very nice. And what markings are you going to go for? Or is it going to not have any?
Egyptian, this is going to be.
Egyptian one. Very nice.
Yeah, which has got two little flags on it, that's it.
That's the great thing with armour, isn't it? You look at them and it's like, yeah, it's got a decal sheet that's this big, and you're like, brilliant. You get something else and it's like this, and you're like, Jesus. That's what I love about armour, isn't it? So yes, good. From my point of view, been massively busy this week. If you've probably seen, if you've been watching, we've had reviews out all week, every single day, and various builds. And I've been pushing on very nicely with this little guy. If I just change up the camera. So again, he is literally all tacked together. That's why the wheels and everything are fall off. But the truck is all done. Obviously, it just needs the windows and mirrors and various things on. But generally, as an entire thing, it is all done. As I say, it's all a loose fit at the moment. That's why, like, literally the bonnet will come off and all the various things. It's beautiful. I am going to turn into a Zvezda fanboy at this rate, because it is absolutely fantastic. The fit has been a dream right the way through, and little things like, I was really concerned about these wings going on, because there's two tiny little tabs which they attach to which go underneath, and I thought there's no way that's going to hold the entire wing on. But it does. It literally goes in, and when they're in right, then obviously the front and the actual cab areas they're there. They literally sit next to each other. So a tap of glue and capillary action, and it is done. So it's gone together really very, very well. So this part will be up with you on Monday, and then literally what I'm going to do is we'll probably have a little bit of a break from this one, so I can do the ZSU. It's all over there. I've had to tidy up because there's a lot coming down, but it's over there. So what I'm going to do is a standalone video with the ZSU 23. We're going to put that together, and then we'll carry on with this build with it mounted on the back. Then we're going to weather the hell out of it, which sort of falls into tonight's show, because at the moment I've sort of done it sort of factory fresh almost. And then what we'll do is, when we got the ZSU done, we'll weather it all together. Because again, like I do explain in this one, you could do it where you could have done the cab, you could have done the front end and the rear deck and weather them separately, but then they're going to end up being slightly different. So I'm put it all together, and we're going to weather it as a whole with the gun system as well. So the gun system will look quite new and ready to go. We'll mount it, and then we're going to weather the hell out of everything together. So we'll go through it through chipping and various things like that.
We were talking about, before we came on air, how good the modern Russian green looks.
It is a fantastic colour, isn't it? Do you know, this may be a thing I didn't really want to talk about. I haven't actually spoken to the guys about this yet. The trouble I've had is that when I've got down in here, I was originally going to use all the Russian colours because I used them with the Book Sam system that we did, but they've all dried out. So it could be user error. I'm not saying it's the AK paints, but they've literally all done it to me. And even like this one here, which is the black, bearing in mind the black, there's only a few little edges. I get to here and I open it up this afternoon and I find literally I've got a quarter of a colour cut. So where the hell's it all gone? And I can't remember using this particular colour on any of the others. And then when I went to, where are we? Where's Russian green? That's the colour we did do, which I'll show you in a moment. Here we are. So when we were in here doing these, where's it gone? Because I didn't use it all. So that's the bit I don't actually understand. And it's like, okay, so this one is absolutely fine. Yeah, and they should all be the same amount because I used them all. This one is absolutely fine, but all I can think of is that literally I've either used this and can't remember doing it because it was a while ago, or it's dried out. So I'm not sure what happened. Anyway, so long story short was, because we were a little bit concerned about this colour, which actually looks, as you can see, it doesn't look a bad colour at all. So what we ended up doing was, this is done in REF green. And as you can probably tell, or I think I can tell, it doesn't actually look half bad.
No.
It's pretty much, if you look at pictures of them, it looks like this anyway. So weirdly enough, I think we've actually done it. So it's REF green right the way over here. And again, it needs lots of weathering and all the stuff down into this. But yeah, it's nice. But the engine detail is fantastic. We've got the cab. The door, all of this literally is, if I pull the doors off, it's all a loose fit. But it all literally clicks together. It's very, very nice indeed. So that's what we ended up doing on that one. But yeah, I was a little bit like, oh God, where's all the paint gone? Because I don't remember using that green on anything else whatsoever, but you never know. I might have done, just can't remember. Let me pop my wheels back on.
That's got me worried now. I'm going to look through mine after the show.
Well, to be honest, I've never had it happen. And the great thing is I think what happens is that when you put in lacquer thinners into their satin ones, like the REF green, it thickens it a little bit because you have to really thin it. My standard thinning for everything that I do with their satin finish, their Air series, if you like, is usually about 70% thinners. And that's pretty nice. And to be honest, it's what I did all the green on this with as well, using 70% thinners. Because it slightly thickens it. So the idea is when you tip a bit back in your bottle, you end up with more every time. So it's like a win-win all the way around. But I don't know if that's affected these and that's what happened. But I don't remember using that colour on anything whatsoever. But it's funny because it's all dried out. And my only other slight problem is, whilst we talk about this, is the rubber black colour. I hate to sort of diss on my own products, but look, it's grey, not black.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So, okay, it's great for worn-in rubber pipes, and that's what I've used on the engine. But, yeah, it's not like Tamiya's rubber black, which is black, or everybody else's that's black. So, yeah, that was a little bit of a thing. So I thought, oh, it's okay, I've got loads of black, I've got rubber black here. Then I opened it and noticed it was dark grey. But it does do a fantastic colour on the front bumper. So, if you do need it, the front bumper grey, that rubber black is absolutely fantastic because it's the right colour for this. So yes, good job. Anyway, our question for tonight is to weather or not to weather? That is the question. Anybody want to start? This is the one. What we're planning on doing with this one, guys, to be honest with you, we're going to break this into 2 shows because I know Matt wants to get involved with this as well because he's got lots of opinions. So what we'll probably do, this is going to run and going to take off, I just know it. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to continue this next week as well because we will have to do a break for this for the questions because some of you guys have posted up some great questions down in here as we go. Okay, but anyway, I'll kick off this one if you like. So the first up for me about when to weather and not to weather and whys and wheres. So this is obviously the Kenworth that I did, completely not weathered because I wanted this one to be sort of factory finish. Okay, so this was the point of doing this particular kit, is that I wanted it to be absolutely mint because I spent so much time doing, well, we redid all the chrome work because this is all Molotov. All of the chrome you see on this is Molotov. Okay, and then obviously I went for a fantastic gloss finish. So I, to be honest, had nothing to hide. So it was one of those ones where we're going to show it completely warts and all. And this thing is huge anyway. As you can see, it's a big old lump. So the whole point with this one is that yes, the next stage you could have given it a weathering wash right the way over, but the way I look at it is that these rigs are usually extremely well looked after. You know, when they do the shows and the various things like it. So I thought, well, we're going to try and recreate that. So again, this was the first time using LP paints, and they gave a fantastic lacquer finish. It had a lacquer coat, and apart from I forgot to polish the clear parts at the top here, as you can see, that's fingerprints on there. Got caught with the glare of the camera. The rest of it is all done. And because I'd spent so much time working with the chrome and, you know, making sure the chassis was perfect and having a perfect finish on all the paintwork, that I didn't really want to mess around and go through the motions of, you know, sort of making it look icky and horrible again, you know. So that's why we literally went to town with it on this particular one and go through. So again, that was the thing. So definitely wasn't going to weather this one at all. And I don't think even giving it a wash or some simple weathering at all, just to highlight areas, would have taken away, I think it would have taken away from the overall finish, because I wanted it to be absolutely mint. So that's the reason we did that one. Another one, which is obviously, you know, I know some people agree, disagree, is the RAF Hawk. So down in here, we did this particular one and we went through the motions of it, and obviously we fought a lot with the actual colour to try and get that sort of somewhat spot on, and various things on with this one. So again, this one had no weathering whatsoever. It literally was just straight out, you know, straight in, no panel line washes or anything else, because I thought it would detract from the scheme, and obviously it's very glossy, as you might imagine, and to put a panel line wash onto it, you don't really see them on the real aircraft, so why would you do it, so to speak? So that was my sort of idea with this one, going through the motions. And because we had actually painted on the markings on this one, well, apart from Royal Air Force and stuff, that you know, it was one of those things where, you know, I think a wash would have taken away, and any type of weathering would have detracted from the finish that we'd achieved with it. So I thought, right, okay, this particular one, we're going to keep it absolutely mint. Okay, right the way through. Very happy with how it came out in the time. But then you get other things and you really want to weather it. So down in here, this is the B-52. So the B-52, to be honest, it's huge. So it needed to get a little bit of scale work going on. So we did this thing with the panels. This is purely just the wash, to be honest. So we sanded the wash in and took some areas off and various things. And because we'd gone around and done various things to it, so this had pretty much weathering thrown at it to try and break it down, because this is only 72nd scale. So what I didn't want to do was just literally leave it as is, because it would look like a toy. So by putting the weathering onto it, it was a way of diverting your eye round. So certain areas like these leading panels down in here, the reason they're left a little bit more weathered and then these are a little bit more cleaner behind, it was just a way of breaking up the entire size of it, because it is so huge but it's still small. So as you can see down in here, what I was trying to achieve is a way of making your eye run around the entire model. So each panel was weathered slightly differently, just in really a vain attempt to break it up, to make your eye look over it. So instead of looking this as just one giant grey piece, as it could have been, you know, that's the reason for weathering, just to try and distract it, because otherwise it looks like that. And that's not good. You know, it's too grey. So as I say, by going in and doing the weathering techniques right the way over it, because you can see there how big this thing really was, you know, it was just easier to go through the motions of doing it all literally that way. So that was my idea behind it. So once it is all done and in, it's all very subtle. It's nothing massively in your face, but it just sort of generally breaks it up. And that's really what I was trying to get at. So my rule of thumb with weathering is that it's a way of obviously, one, distracting people, because like this guy down in here, without weathering, this does look like, to be honest, a bit like a toy. You know, that's the thing to it. So it's green, it's accurate, well, right, it's not accurate green, but it's pretty close green, and the various things, but without weathering, it just doesn't really pop. it looks too nice. So I think with weathering, it just adds depth. It gives it that scale effect that we often look at. And then obviously, if you want to go further with the weathering, so if you're going to be doing distressing weathering, you know, and various things as you're going through with it, it adds and it tells a story to your particular item as you're doing it. Because everyone can say, okay, that's a Ural, you know, 420 and all the rest of it, 4320. That's what it is. But if you wanted to tell it in a particular area, a particular part of the world, a particular scenario, the weathering will tell you that. So if you're doing an aircraft or a piece of armor that's very dusty, you know, it's come from a dusty environment, that means heat, you know, that means bleaching, and you've got all those things that go into it. So I think that's really what you're going to be trying to be doing, is to represent a vehicle in a particular theater, a time frame, or whatever it is. So that's where weathering comes in, because anybody could just build it like that. But it's that next stage where you go through the weathering of it, and how you go about your weathering stage will then show you what you're trying to show the viewer. So hopefully you're all on the same page. So you get somebody to look at it and it looks all dusty and that, and you think, oh, that's a Middle Eastern type thing, or that's from the desert, or very grimy. If it's perhaps in somewhere very muddy, or a snow scheme, you can say, oh, you know, a World War II Tiger tank and all the rest of it, or a King Tiger in snow, then you can see exactly what you're trying to achieve from it. So that's my point to weathering, is literally to sort of set the scene of where that model is representing.
The myth, the man, the legend, whose name's led to the popular colloquialism, it's been haggled, is in chat.
Is it? Oh, right. There you go. So there you go. There's Mr. Weathering himself.
So he says that he likes heavily weathered aircraft.
Really? I've never known.
He looks at reference photos. It's like when Jamie did the, was it the Wessex?
Yes.
It was a Wessex, wasn't it? Was it Sea King?
Wessex, I think.
Wessex, I can't remember, yeah. And then he put a photo of it, exactly how it was, how he'd done it. And yeah, fantastic that did, but yeah. But for me, I've in my mind how I want to weather something. And I'll go down that route until I get to do it. But I think, yeah, that'll do. I just need to push myself that extra bit. So, yeah, I think, I don't know, especially recently, I've become that slower modeler. Just once I got to a certain stage, I want to get them off my desk.
Yes.
Yeah, but this one's going to be different. Yeah, this is going to be proper beat up, knackered. Yeah, weathered, you know, and yeah, going to get to town on this one. Got the rest of the year to do it, so yes.
Yes, definitely.
Can I just ask you a question, Phil? When did you start doing weathering? At what point of your career did you start?
Okay, so from my point of view, weathering was not so much of a thing when I was doing commission work, because weathering is very much, you know, my idea of weathering a model, and obviously the owner, shall we say, of that model, who I'm building it for, could be completely different. To be honest, I was lucky because I had a handful of maybe 20 or 30 clients who I used to work with all the time. So I knew them all, you know, pretty well. So I know what I could do and what I could get away with. Sometimes they would see one of my bits of work which was done for another commission from somebody else, and they would say, oh, I quite like that. Could you do mine like it? But that being said, and being very honest here, most people just would like a simple weathering job, nothing over the top, because they wanted it for display or whatever reasons it was they were doing it for. So they wouldn't want it to be a specific theatre or a specific thing, and that's what we're talking about with weathering as well. So, you know, most of them would just go with, because I did, most of mine were aircraft, as you know, so it'd be a simple wash. And to be honest, that's where the Flooring Model wash cake got born from, was all of that. So a simple weathering wash right the way over it, just to make the details all pop, and maybe a little bit of post shading, and that would always be it as a rule. You know, there was exceptions right the way through, and I had a particular client of mine who literally was great, because he would say to me, I don't care, whatever you want to do to it, it'll be absolutely fine. He goes, I trust you, which is unusual because most of them don't. So, you know, but it was nice with him. And to be honest, that's the guy who built the big Typhoon, the 24 scale Typhoon. That was a classic example. He said, do what you like. I will just have it when you're finished. He goes, I know you'll be fine. Go for it. So I could get away with a lot more. But most of them, to be honest, they're not as that trusting. And they would say perhaps a little bit of weather and wash around the gear just to make it pop, and perhaps a simple panel line wash. That'll be fine. Because again, they may be used not so much for a specific display. It may be just for general work and stuff like that. So again, because it's personal, and if they've got it in their office, they might not want it to be set for a pure location. They just want it as a general one. So that's the thing.
I know we want to jump on to John Nathan, but can I just, in chat, one of the guys asked, is it him, is the weathering product's got to have hand at the moment? You don't have to buy everything though, do you? As long as you buy a full set of Flory washers.
Yeah, you'll be fine. That's absolutely fine to go along with your full set of pigments and your full set of sanders. You'll be absolutely fine with all of those.
Everything else is just, yeah.
But again, when you're doing commission work, it's very difficult, because obviously if I'm building a particular subject, I might want to weather it a certain way, and I might say to the client, you know, I was thinking about this, and normally I'd have a photo to, you know, show them and say something like this, you know, and some of them might be, well, that's a little bit more. And it's funny how I think modelers prefer weathering more than non-modelers, and obviously all of my clients, barring one, was a non-modeler. So again, that's the thing, when you're dealing with that side of the business, it's completely different, if you like, to dealing with modelers, because modelers like weathering, they like all the details and the various things, where non-modelers just want overalls, I think, and that's the difference. So John, what do you reckon? What's your take on weathering?
For me, there's two ways of weathering. You either want the artistic approach, or the more realism approach, and it depends on the model I'm building what way I go with it.
Yeah.
I'm doing the MiG at the moment in Libyan colours, and I've actually Googled, and there's lots of photos of the actual plane that's in the markings on the internet, and it's surprisingly clean. And not weathered at all. So I think for this one, I'll probably just do a panel line wash, maybe a little bit of staining here and there, but that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Andy, I have a rough, when I start a project, I've got a rough idea in my mind of where I want to go with it. And sometimes it'll be the artistic route, where I'll weather it maybe not quite how it would weather in real life, or if I can find loads of reference photos on the particular subject, I'll use those and try and get a more realistic approach to it. But like Andy said, a lot of the time I just get to that last little hurdle, and it's like, you know, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just
it'll do.
Yeah.
Wax some Flory wash on it, and that'll do.
Yeah. Definitely. Nathan, what about you?
I think what I've done, I'll put the overhead on and see what I'm talking about rather than looking at me. I'm going to think. Sorry. I've done my most recent build, is it up?
Yeah.
Is the Buccaneer. And that is just a Flory wash. Literally just a Flory wash. And I did that because I think they were glossy, the South African Buccaneers, and very well looked after because they couldn't get any new ones. But I think it's missing something. I mean, the build that I did before that was the Aussie Spitfire, and on this one I did a lot more. It doesn't really show up on the camera, is it? But it doesn't show up on the camera very well. But I did a load of work with pencils, sort of wearing the paint out, not chipping it, but wearing the paint. And I think I prefer the more weathered look. I think the light's not doing this any favours, but I think it's more interesting to look at a weathered model than a less weathered one. But then you get to an aircraft like this one, and you think if there's one aircraft that was well looked after and clean, it'd be this one, wouldn't it? So
yeah,
that's the challenge, and I think it's just making it visually interesting weathering, doesn't it? Stops it looking like a corgi kit.
It's a good point you make about it doesn't show up on camera.
Yeah.
Because loads of times I've sort of weathered something, you think, oh, that looks great. Then you try and take a photo of it.
It doesn't show up.
You just can't see it. You're thinking, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the minimum weathering that sort of prefer to do is what I've done with these two 109s. Probably show up better on the white one, but just at least put some exhaust stains on.
Yeah.
And a bit of wear. That's when the pilot comes in on this side, doesn't he? So I think I'd like to always put a wash on for the panel lines and at least do a little bit of work where the pilots come in and out and do some exhaust staining. So I think there is a sweet spot, keeping it looking like it's still serviceable.
Yes.
But looking like it's used.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a bit of a myth built up around sort of Luftwaffe stuff, is they were never around long enough to be weathered.
Yeah.
But they weren't. Some of them were knocking around for months and months and months and months, and would look, especially the Eastern Front ones, would look absolutely hammered, I imagine. But it depends on the era of the aircraft. You know, look at the Gulf War stuff. If you don't weather your Tornadoes, they just look weird.
Yes.
You know, and if you look at the Russian stuff, they were doing what, multiple sorties per day in god awful weather. So I think you need to sort of reflect that.
Again, I think that's down to like we were saying before. If you're trying to just build a model, then obviously you could get away with no weathering at all, because like obviously Ural truck, that's what a Ural truck looks like when they're new and out the factory. But as soon as you put them in a location or a time frame, so like you're saying, if you're talking about Second World War aircraft, the look of them was secondary to the actual operational of them. You know, as long as they haven't gone tech, who cares? You know, at the end of the day, as I said, like I know Jamie just mentioned in the chat about like World War II, height of the Battle of Britain. If you look at the RAF Command aircraft, they were absolutely hammered to hell. No one cared about them. They were like patchwork quilts, because they would get patched up. Literally, they'd be flying 2 or 3, 4, even 5 times a day. You know, so no one is going to clean or repaint an aircraft because it's not on the ground long enough. You know, and that is the thing. And then obviously, if you're talking about, you know, we're talking about Luftwaffe aircraft not being around long enough to weather. Again, there's obviously exceptions to the rule about that, you know, and again, if they're in a particular theatre, you know, so if they're in like the winter, the various things, temporary camos are applied, or just camos are applied to them, they're not put on nicely. They're normally put on in the field and just chucked on, you know, and away you go. We often talk about D-Day markings, of how everyone makes a thing about it being perfect distances and perfect finishes. And the reality was, and I've got photos of them on a file somewhere, of people putting them on with mops, with brooms, you know, literally, they are literally just chucking them on any which way. And they are horrible, jangly, little horrible things like that. I remember, like, me and Andy went, didn't we, to Dax? They had the Spitfire there, wasn't it? And it was really nice because they'd put it on clearly by hand. And it looked though well, because it had D-Day markings all over it, but they were really ropily done. It was pretty horrible, but it was obviously a temporary one they'd put on themselves, like a water-based paint. But we were saying that's probably the most authentic. All the others are perfect lines, but the Spitfire had obviously been redone for Dax in D-Day marking, so they had put on a temporary one, and we were all saying that's probably the most realistic one we've ever seen, because that's how they would have been done, you know. So yeah, definitely it's an interesting thing about, as I say, putting it in a time and place is where your weathering comes in, because you're, again, I think, telling the story. So as you said, if you're doing a Luftwaffe aircraft, you know, from a certain time frame or something else like that, it is going to be, you know, I remember doing research years ago about doing a 190, and obviously the front end and the wing assemblies all and fuselage come out of different factories, but they're all pre-painted, so none of the camo lines up. So they were saying you deliberately don't have them lined up, so the front cow is separate to the fuselage, and then the wings, because they're all done in different factories, and then they come together, so there's no way they would ever have lined up. So the idea of having a step in there between the camo patterns works really well. And again, you're telling that story of it's come from a different factory. That's why the camo doesn't line up, you know? So again, I think it's an interesting thing where you can take it through your painting into weathering. You're into an entire new field of what you're after.
I think there are just so many variables in it. I mean, a lot of people ask for like a magic formula for weathering, but I don't think there's any such thing, is there? Because it depends on what you're building, the scale, you know, the scheme, where there's so many variables.
Yes.
That you can't sort of just say, right, ABC, this is how you do it.
Yes, of course, absolutely. And again, it depends. I know, Jamie's in there as well. He's probably our most prolific weatherer out of everybody I know. And again, I know Jamie uses a lot of references for his. So he'll have a reference of that exact thing and he will recreate that photo on his model, and that's the way he does. And again, kudos to him. That's one way of doing it. For me, though, I don't know if this comes from doing, 10 years of commission work, but I don't like doing that. That's not my way of doing it. I like to weather organically. So it's telling a story. So if I have a little accident, for instance, I'm the first one to say, that's had a repaint there. So if something's not quite right, call it a Bob Ross moment. So it's like happy little accident. And some of my best work, I think, is where I've screwed up. And I'm like, right, okay, so we're going to redo a panel. Okay, we'll sand it back, we'll redo that entire section and repaint it, and then we can say it's habit. I did it literally on the A10. We had a sink mark that turned up like weeks into the build. So resanded it, redid it, masked it, repainted it. It's still got it on there to this day. And it looks like the panel's been repainted or a different panel or whatever it is at some point. And again, it helps. It tells the story of it, and that's my story to it. So I'm not trying to say this particular aircraft is from this day in history at this minute. So it's not from like the 5th of August 1987, at 2:30 in the afternoon. That's what I've recreated. I'm just recreating that overall impression of it. So if I'm working on something like the Vulcan, for instance, which will be a classic, I'm going to do it, weather it how I feel is right. So obviously I have references of how they weather, but I might be looking at 20 different aircraft to take an overall of it. So it's going to be a 617, Vulcan, but when and where and what day and what hour of the day it was taken and in what light won't matter to me, because it will be as I want to do it, and it will evolve. The weathering will evolve how it's going almost. So I might say, do you know what, I'm going to stop there, I'm going to walk away from it, or I might think, right, we're going to do another little bit and we're going to do this. And I think that's the nice thing how I like to model. But again, that may be just me rebelling almost from where I was doing commission, where I was told what it should look like. Now I'm free to do whatever I like with it and to do whatever weathering you want to do it. So sometimes I think I've probably gone too far. Other times I think probably stopped at the right point. Other times I think I probably could have done a little bit more, and that's the nice thing to it. And don't forget, the great thing with weathering is you can go back years and redo it, because weathering is one of those things you're just adding to the model.
Jamie said that sometimes though he does pick another machine from the same unit at the same time, or even a fictional one from that unit. That way I have leeway and artistic license.
Because sometimes I think it's nice to have that artistic license, because you're adding your stamp to it, and this is no disrespect to a lot of armour modelers, but in some ways some of the best work I've seen is where they've been completely over-weathered. Because you never see an armour where it's faded that much and it's got, and it's weathered in that way, but they look fantastic. And especially where you see these, I say the Eastern European guys have got it down to a fine art. They will literally bleach them back and modulate the tones, and you can see every detail on the tank. But it's not how I've ever seen one, but it shows all that great work they've done as well. And I've often said I'm a massive fan of that style, even though I don't think it's at all realistic, but I like it because it's almost, we often talk about, or I do anyway, pantomime makeup. So you're accentuating the details of the model to make it show more. So you might do more faded paintwork to show the smaller details off more, so they pop better. So by lightening the paint, the smaller details, because they're darker, show up more. And again, it's a great way of sort of exaggerating all the tiny little details and all that hard work you put in, instead of it being green, and things like that. So definitely. So yes, I don't know. That's the thing. I think it's one of these things. It's one of those topics where, again, depending on your genre as well, don't you think? So obviously, if you're doing cars or trucks like we just saw, they don't get weather very often because people want to show that gloss finish.
Yeah.
See, for me, if I'm doing cars and vehicles like that, I can do rally cars or racing cars, so you can add some weather into them. Because otherwise, I do think they look a bit too toy-like. But That's just my personal preference.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at some of the F1 cars at the end of a race, you've got weathering opportunities there, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
Fly splats.
Especially if it's Verstappen's recently.
Do you know what? That's funny you say that. I was actually, me and the other half were talking about it the other day. She said about doing some F1 stuff. And I was saying, you never see a diorama, do you, of one that's in a tyre wall? No one ever does. I haven't seen one yet of somebody stuck one. Somebody will, and it'll look amazing, but somebody will recreate crashes, and say, look, this is the Max one where he stuffed it in the tyre wall, 51G, do it that way.
Jamie's put a photo up of a Bulgarian MiG-21. That's battered.
Well, that's really hammered, is it?
That's probably battered.
Again, do you remember when I was doing I think we were doing the SU-33s, and I put up that picture, didn't I, where clearly somebody had touched it in with an aerosol can, and it was on the ship, and that was a classic example, because the one next to it was mint. The aircraft next to it was absolutely beautiful. This one looked like Yuri had been up there with a couple of cans on a touching job, and it absolutely mullered the top and the back end from the speed brake back. It looked like he'd right, no problem, I've got this, and gone over it. It was rough as hell.
But it's then when you see the Greek ones, isn't it? They're all faded, and you see the panel lines that have been sprayed over with fresh paint and
And again, that's the thing we often talk about, isn't it? Is obviously naval aircraft. The weird thing is that because of saltwater corrosion, especially if you're looking at the older jets as well, like Phantoms, Corsairs, Intruders, those types of things. If you see them when they've been in the cruise, the cruise is typically 6 months. By the end of the cruise, they are absolutely hammered where they've been resprayed. And I've got a couple of good friends of mine who've been maintainers and pilots as well, and crew on these types of aircraft. And they were saying is that it's nothing to do with looks and stuff. It's purely practicalities. If they've opened up a hatch, to go into maintenance, the first thing it will get when it's resealed in place, one, it's never put in very nicely anyway, so it's all oozing out of everywhere from the sealant they use with them, but also they get sprayed over because of where they've put the tools in to open up the panels. It has to be protected. And it's necessity. It's done out of necessity. It's nothing to do with looking nice or anything else. So by the end of it, they look absolutely battered, So that's when obviously they come back off of the cruise. You hope they go into, a bit of proper TLC and get sanded down and repainted and reprimed and everything else like that and done properly. But at the time, as I say, especially again, if you're looking at wartime, the stuff during the Vietnam War, which is over in the Gulf of Tonkin and things like that, they were absolutely hammered on there by the end of the cruises.
Yeah. Back to Luftwaffe again. I know I keep banging on about it, but if you look at their Phantoms at the end of service, Germany would have some really filthy looking aeroplanes touched up and because they'd only respray them in major surfaces, so you could, if you look, you have got some modern jets with World War II levels of weathering in air forces where you wouldn't normally expect it. So it's definitely worth getting pictures up of the aircraft and sort of seeing what you can do weathering wise to keep it realistic. But that's up to you, isn't it? I mean, that's the big message tonight, I think, is you weather it how you like it.
And again, that is the thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, all your modelling, it should be technically your weathering, isn't it? So as I say, you're weathering it to your particular finish of how you want to see it. I've often said that sometimes you'll look at a picture online and you'll see another person who's built a model and you'll be inspired to do that particular one, and it's great. Like I always say, those that take your cues from it, take the things you like about it. So if you like the particular way they've done some, say on an aircraft you've done the paneling, so forget your wash, but they've done the big, we're talking about touch-ins, on aircraft carrier stuff, gets and various things, doing lots of those. Take your cues from it, but I wouldn't try and copy it just literally one for one, because you want to put your type of stamp on it as well. At the end of the day, you want to put your own personal touches into it.
I mean, doing one-to-one is you can often just get one side of the aircraft, can't you? So you have to guess at the other side anyway.
Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, you could end up with literally just half an aircraft because you're not quite sure what's going on the other half. But yeah, I think it's definitely, it's one of those interesting subjects because again, you can then go right the way down to figure painting. So if you look at figure painting, you know, obviously you get various types of ones with that. You'll get the guys who just do a clean person stood there, you know, and all the rest of it with his tunic and his rifle and stuff. Yet you'll get other guys who give that, you know, with the figure, you know, the worn look, the stubble, the, you know, cuts and bruises and various things. The tunic's all ripped open and it looks like he's been through a battle and all the rest of it. You know, other times you'll get people, quick dry brush, bit of shading and it's done. Then he looks like, well, where's he been? Has he literally just come out of his room, out of his quarters? You know, so again, it's personal touch on how you're trying to show it right the way through.
I think it can be very overwhelming. There's so much information on weathering techniques and processes on the internet, especially for people just coming back to the hobby.
Yeah.
It can completely overwhelm you. But what you've got to bear in mind is you don't have to chuck every technique and method at your model.
No.
You know, just pick one or two, start with that and see how you progress from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. You know, at the end of the day, like we've often said, is this thing as well as trial and error, what works for you? Because some techniques work for one person, not another. So that's the other thing with weathering. You know, it's easy to say, or do a panel line wash. So, you know, do you want to use my wash? Do you want to use an oil wash? Do you want to use a Tamiya panel liner? Do you want to use everybody else who makes panel liners as well? You know, and then literally you're into that situation of like, which one works best for you, which gives you the best effect, you know, and then obviously with all the other weathering, you know, do you post shade? Do you pre-shade? When do you post shade? When do you pre-shade? You know, that's the thing, isn't it? But Jamie says there, as long as you're having fun though in the process, that's all that counts. Absolutely, 100%.
Exactly, yeah.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? Is enjoying your work and putting into it what you like, isn't it? You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're one of these people who just builds it straight out of the box. And we were talking about this the other day about how at model shows and things like that, the clean stuff tends to get overlooked if it's a perfect representation and it's a perfect model, you know, and it's perfect build. Gets overlooked because you get another one that's a bit more weathered and a bit more beaten and the various things that goes around with it. You know, I was talking to a guy about this and we were discussing, this would be a classic example. If your bonnet didn't fit because your alignment's out, what you'd do is you'd stick the bonnet up. So that way you can't show the alignment's out. But if your alignment was twisted here, luckily mine's not, but if it was and you had gaps around it, you could just display it with the bonnet open. So that goes with aircraft as well. So you could open the doors, you could open the canopy. If you've got a really bad seam and it won't go, you could just open the canopy and have it open, gets around that problem. Weathering then comes into this as well. So if you've got a situation where you've got a really dodgy bit of paintwork, you just weather the hell out of it. And then you could just get away with it like that, you know. Or as I say, you can do various things, isn't it? With weathering, stick a tarp on it, all these different things, which technically is a form of weathering. It's a great way of hiding away errors, problems, various things. Yep. So in some ways what I'm getting at here is if you build a pristine, clean model, you've got nothing to hide behind. Everybody can see it exactly how it was. So like when I did the truck, for example, I was making damn sure the paintwork was perfect because there's nothing to hide behind. You couldn't have just given it, oh, we'll put a bit of pigment up the side and dust it up, because perhaps it hasn't got the right gloss effect or it's got a bit of dodgy effect into it, so you can do that, or stick some grime on it or something else like that, so you can hide away. And that's the great thing with weathering, you can hide a multitude of errors. You know, you can get rid of bad seam lines, you can get rid of fingerprints, you can get rid of glue marks, you can hide a lot behind weathering.
True. Do you notice we're doing this as a two-parter?
Yes.
It's 8:20.
Yes. Shall we go over to questions? because we have got quite a few in here today because
Yeah.
it started a bit of a topic.
Loads, isn't there?
Okay, one rolling over from last week though, because it was slightly the wrong area, which we did find. The first one is from Dino, and he says, following on from the theme of last week's show, Aftermarket, have you any experience of well-respected companies releasing a correction resin part that is actually incorrect, i.e. the original styrene part was correct all along and didn't require any corrections in the first place? I have, but no names. No pack drill. Is that a clue? But just saying the kit in question was not an aircraft, and the company in question is no longer trading. Well, Dino, that's about as half-handy as a chocolate teacup. We need names, we need people, and if they're not in business, they can't sue us. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. I've used stuff, famously, if you want to go back through my history, I won't name any names, Mastercasters, re-released a entire cow flap system for a Corsair that was the wrong scale. Which I must admit, I did speak to the gentleman who actually made the master for it, which wasn't Mastercasters, and he pointed out his was fine, but it's been recast so much by the said company that it's getting smaller with every cast. So consequently, when I come to do it, it was, instead of being 1/32, it was more like 1 whatever. It was definitely too small. So what I had to do was cut it into 8 and then put them all slightly apart to make it bigger to go in. So I have used parts that are clearly not fit for purpose. Any of you guys used anything like that?
Usually a company will do a correction if people moan about it, won't they? Rather than off their own back. And yeah, it's strange that people will moan about it if it's not if it's not correct, if it isn't incorrect. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think with social media these days, it'd be harder for them to get away with it, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Be called out pretty sharpish. But I do wonder back in the day. But we talked about this last week, like correction and conversion sets seem to have disappeared.
Yeah.
A lot of aftermarket now is, I mean, you get the odd one where you get like a new nose for the Sukhoi, I forget which one it is, the one with the duck bill.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's about the only one I've seen of late. I reckon people did it back in the day. Just to make a few quid. But
again, I know it was like last time, obviously it's a different conversation that we had last week, have a look, but I do think that it used to be back in the day where people would do a conversion from a particular mark. So you might have like a Mark C to a Mark D, or from a single seat system to a 2-seat system, like we're saying with the Lightnings and that. And that's where aftermarket used to be. You would buy a conversion set to make what is not available. So you might get a particular bomber and then somebody would do it. I did it with the Halifax, wasn't it? Because I had the radio engines and I put the inline ones into it. So you buy a conversion set to convert that particular aircraft from the mark it is into another one. And various things, which is a nice way of doing it, but that seems to have died. For people doing a full conversion from one type to another, I don't know if that is because most manufacturers now release multiple versions of. So that's just say I don't know, like the Cobra we've just done. We know there's other ones coming down the line now which are going to fill them all in. So is it worth an aftermarket company turning around saying, "Oh, I'm going to do a conversion to a whatever version for it"? Because they're probably going to get gazumped within a couple of years by the manufacturer bringing out the real version of it.
Yeah.
So I can't think of an example off the top of my head, to be honest. A dodgy aftermarket.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do a conversion for anything that ICM did, would you? Because
come out a week later.
Guaranteed that within a week later it would come out with it.
Yeah, that's it. And that is the trouble. I think perhaps that's what's put manufacturers off now from doing that aftermarket, because they know, because let's face it, you have put in all that time and money into doing an aftermarket set, and then 6 months later they bring out that kit. No one's going to buy your aftermarket because they know they'd have to do the surgery to fit it in. So
there are still one or two out there, I think, aren't there? Is it Ames? They do a lot of conversion stuff for Luftwaffe stuff, don't they?
Yeah, it's out. It's definitely. I mean, I can think of a set to convert an early Lightning, an S1 Buccaneer, But I
Yeah, but
don't
are they old conversion sets? They're not new.
they're for this new kit and for the new Lightning.
All right.
But I can't think of examples of dodgy aftermarket. I just don't think you get away with it now.
No,
And
I
you
don't think you
brand-
would after. Yeah, I think you'd
You
probably be hounded to
release-
death.
If you release 1, 2, 3 dodgy aftermarket sets, your brand's finished. And that you're dead.
Because to be honest, this is for another topic completely, but me and the other half were talking about, because obviously she's very much into this business as well as me, and we were talking about, if you remember back in the 90s, where you buy a catalogue and do it mail order. So like, I remember having the Hannant's catalogue, wasn't it? That was your only source of that and magazines before the internet came along. So you wouldn't know if it was right or wrong, because nobody would tell you if it was wrong. So you'd be there flicking through the catalogues, picking out your aftermarket bits, not having a clue what was going to turn up, especially if it's the Hannant's one. Do you remember that old, it was like an old Yellow Pages, it was crap, wasn't it? And it was just numbers and prices, that's all it was.
Yeah.
And so you really had no idea what was coming in. So talk about pot luck, you'd be like hopeful that it's roughly what it says on the description. You know, so that's literally all you had. So thank God for the internet.
Yes, definitely.
So yes. Anyway, right. So getting a little bit more on track. So we've got Scott says, who or what was responsible for being beginning of the weathering craze or fashion? Was there a modern day model making? What is the particular product? A professional modeler, or was it simply the internet taking this part of the modeling building process to new heights? I would have to say it's a little bit of everything. I know everyone's going to turn around now and say about Valinden, because they were very much used to do a lot of weathering stuff, but I'm not being funny, they were responsible because they were flogging a lot of aftermarket stuff to go with their products. So, you know, that's a lot of what they were doing back in the day. I have to say,
I think.
go on.
I was going to say that I think that weathering definitely started before the internet.
Yes.
I think the internet has accelerated it to the madness it is now. But you know, I mean, I can remember dry brushing and using oils and pigments, grinding pigments up to make. Grinding pastels up to make pigments.
Yeah.
Before I even had a computer. Where I got the ideas from, I ain't got a clue. Probably magazines, I think. So
Yeah.
I always used to do exhaust staining when I was air cadet, so that would be sort of late 80s. I was weathering exhaust stains. I wasn't doing panel line washes and stuff like that back then, but I was definitely doing exhaust streaking, I think with black eyeshadow stuff of all things. All sorts of weird and wonderful.
using HB pencils for doing.
Saying about it, I used to have a mechanical pencil with an HB lead, and I used to do all the panel lines with it. And then I'd wipe it and buff it afterwards. So you get a little bit of sort of that type of sort of staining around the panel lines and all things like that. So that was my way back in the day.
I think it's one of them things. It's impossible to decide exactly. Work out exactly where it started. With my dad, he still occasionally builds models, and I build models for him, and he doesn't like them weathered.
No.
It definitely wasn't a thing in his day. So I've been doing it for. I probably used to weather more 20 odd years ago than I do now. That's a time and patience thing, I think.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's certainly, you know, let's face it, MIG has been instrumental about bringing it through social media, as in like videos and stuff like that. You know, they've brought it to the forefront. AK, because that's what they do. They're two weathering companies. So, you know, at the end of the day, they're pushing their own products. You know, if you look at any of their books and magazines, they're not talking about my products. They're not showing anybody else's products in there. They are using it purely for their own sales figures, you know, of pushing them along and everything else. But what that's enabled it is to bring to the forefront, everybody can see how it's done. Now, not everyone's obviously going to use their products, because clearly they're using mine and using everybody else's as well, because it's the same techniques. But what they have done is obviously done a lot of videos and obviously a lot of social media and all the rest of it, of showing how to use techniques. Now, some of these techniques I totally disagree with. Like some of them, literally, I'm like, what the are they doing? You know, because they are literally trying to reinvent the wheel using their own products and making it really hard to do it as well. It's like a really stupid way of doing it. It's a lot easier way of doing it, but because it's flogging a product of theirs, it's the way to do it, which, you know, again, they're flogging their own product, so you can't really blame them for it. But sometimes I'm literally like, why? Why would you do that? You know, but again, in some ways though, I think it's good because you don't have to use their products and they're showing you how you can do it with pretty much anything else. You know, we talk about, you know, some of the products some of these companies flog these days, and I won't do my usual sales my usual pitch of what I think of it, but it is that thing where sometimes it is literally reinventing the wheel, and a lot of the products they're flogging are what I would call old timers techniques from the 70s and 80s. But they put a new spin on it and it makes it feel like it's a brand new technique, and it's like, no. You know, like, to be honest, if you're watching the Vulcan one, which will go up tomorrow, I talk about sprue goo. It's something that's been around since the 60s. And, you know, as a filler and doing it that way, it's probably one of the oldest things in the industry. There's all these hundreds of new fillers and stuff like that you can use. But we used it on the Vulcan. And then we used a little bit of scrape cleaning for tidy up and various else, but you could buy 100 products to do the same thing, you know. But sometimes the old timer stuff is still the best, you know. So yes, Steve says, how many people do weathering like to paint by numbers on one system after another, or start it and go for it, making it more organic, using artistic flair and seeing what happens? Which is a good question. John, go on. How do you do your weathering? Do you have a set course?
Wing it.
He wings it. That's good. We like winging it. That's how I do it.
Wing it. Just make it up as I go along.
But do you have a standard thing? So do you ever put, like, think to yourself, well, look, we've done this. We've just done our decaling. Okay, so are you one of these that says, right, so it needs a clear coat to protect it, and then you're going to give it a panel wash, and then you're going to go this, that, and the other? Or do you literally just, I'm just going to go for this?
Not always, because sometimes I've given it a panel line wash before I've deckled.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's whatever mood I'm in at the time, and like I say, at the start of the build, what I'm going for, what's in my mind's eye that I want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got no set. Sometimes I'll start the kit and I think, right, this is what I'm going to do. By the time I get to the painting stage, I might have changed my mind completely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a bit, yeah.
So you're organic.
I'm organic, definitely.
Very organic, definitely. Nathan, what about you?
I think what I do these days is a prime, but not using primers. I've stopped pre-shading. That's something I've stopped doing completely. So when I do this phantom, I'm going to spray it in solid colours, and then I do use clear on every build. Every build will have a dark dirt wash, and every build will have the same flat varnish on it.
Yes.
Because I know they work.
Yes. Just like to point out, other washes are available. They're just not as good.
I mean, with the Spitfire that I did a little bit of, a lot of the underside was just done with an airbrush, just for speed, because no one's ever going to see it. And then the top side was with pencils, so I'm playing around with pencils at the moment. But I will follow somebody's technique if I'm trying something for the first time. When I did a tank, which I won't get now, I sort of religiously followed somebody else's method just for the first time.
Yes.
And then after that, I'll start sort of, I mean, I've incorporated pencils into pretty much everything now. For example, I'll sort of wing it after a point, and then happy accidents and all that sort of kick in at that point, especially when you're doing, like, because I'm doing post shading now, I'll do post shading after decaling. That's where your happy accidents definitely creep in a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I'm a bit of both. I've got a formula, but then I will just go. It'll just the weathering just it sort of leads me sometimes, which is a bit weird.
which I think is nice because you're being led by what you. I think that's actually one of the nicest things. You know, when you're building a model and perhaps it's not going quite the way, especially with weathering, and it's not, perhaps you're not getting it how you're wanting it. Sometimes you end up with fantastic results. You know, and I'll be honest here, one of the best ones for me was actually the underside of the sock with camel, because I wanted it to show that sort of translucent look with all the rest of it. But that sort of grimy effect I've got in there, I don't know how I did it. It just sort of happened. And I watched back the video of me doing it and everything else like that. And it's like, do you know what? That looks really, really good. And I was really chuffed with that. And, you know, that's why I show it at every opportunity. I won't do it today. But it's like, because it just worked. It came out so much better than I thought it did. But I thought it was going wrong. So I'm trying to correct the problem. And what we ended up in the end, though, was something with far more depth, I think, than I think I would have normally done. If it had worked how I wanted it to, I don't think it would have been as good because it didn't have that depth to it. It didn't look translucent, you know, and I've done it in other things as well, and it just looked like there was shadowing and you could get the effect, but it didn't have that depth to it. And again, that's because it wasn't quite working exactly how I wanted it to. And then by the end of it, it sort of came together, which is very, very satisfying, I think. You know, like I sit here on camera and go, and there you go, and didn't it turn out great? Thanks, join us next week, bye. And I'm, Jesus, after it, I'm like, how the hell did that come off? I'm impressed myself, you know. So don't think I sit here and it's all planned with a script, because clearly it isn't, you know. And that's the honest truth to it. Sometimes it literally comes out so much better than I thought it was going to, you know. And I think that's the nice thing with having organic modelling, you know, because you don't know when you're going to stop as well. You know, you carry on until you're happy with it. I always say you get that little thing on your shoulder that says you want to stop now before you screw this up, you know, because otherwise something's going to go wrong. And I'm a great believer in listening to that little voice, because then, you know, many a time I've pushed my luck and I've ended up having to repaint things even and go right the way back because it's just gone too far now and I can't get it back. So, yeah. Andy, what about you?
I'm sort of, I think, very similar to Nathan. Sets different products. I mean, I use GX100 instead of clear, and XF86 instead of extra acrylics matte, whatever it is. Both available from pmstores.com.
PM Store, get the advert in quick.
But yeah, so I sort of have a set thing. So like that, Nathan, especially on aircraft, I'll use panel line wash as my start off point. And then once that's done, then it's all right. It'll get a satin coat, and then it's all right. Then working on to other things like pencils, oils, pigments, not pigments really, sort of on aircraft, but it's all right. Move on to other things after that. But I always have that beginning bit is the same pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
Which is when I get unstuck sometimes, because then it's at that stage, it's had a flory wash, and I think, actually, that looks all right.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll call that a day. Do you know what I mean? We'll move on to something else. So really, I suppose I sort of probably could do with changing it up a bit, so I'm not at that stage, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so yeah, that's my beginning bit, then move on to other things, and so then it's organic after that. Deciding on what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it.
No. So to answer Pablo's down there, am I saying it was a fluke? What, you mean this? No, this was definitely where... No, what I'm talking about here is this griminess that's down in here. You know, if anybody's ever owned a boat, you'll know what sails go like. And that was what I was trying to sort of achieve, was just get, you know, off of the, obviously the exhausts under here, well, not the exhaust, but, you know, the rotary of the engine under here, flicks it all down in here. I was trying to get this to be, you know, really sort of grimy, and obviously this is handled as well, and it just turned out exactly how I wanted. Now, if somebody was to, and I'll be blatantly honest with you, if I could recreate that again, I don't know. That's the whole point. This isn't a technique where I could say I could recreate that. You give me 10 models, I'll do that 10 times. I don't think, honestly, I could. I would give it a go, because obviously I've done it, but could I achieve that exactly how that's gone? I'm not sure, you know, and that's the whole point to it. And that's what we're talking really about, sort of organic modelling versus standard modelling. If you've got your set way of doing it, obviously you're not going to be pushing it at any point. And I agree with Andy a lot of the time. Sometimes I put a wash on a model, and often you'll hear me on the videos as well, where I'll say, in a minute we're going to do this, this and this, but I'll do it and it's worked so well, normally with the wash if I'm honest, and it's not just because it's my wash and all the rest of it, but it's just from my personal likes and dislikes of how I like weathering models. Sometimes a wash with the griminess and things like that is just exactly what I want. So I often think if I'm then going to carry on and go on with, you know, perhaps post shading, you know, so you start going in there adding grime and that with an airbrush or with oils or obviously with pigments and things like that, I think I'm going to lose the look I've got. And I'm very happy with the look I've got. So a lot of the times, and I've been very honest about it in the video builds, and I've said, do you know what, I'm going to call it quits there, because I really feel that that's what it needs. That's the look I'm after. So I don't need to go through all those extra measures, you know, and that's the thing to it. And again, I think that's the nice thing with organic modeling, because you're working along, you know, like that. So definitely.
I think Guy's made a good point that you do need some experience to do organic weathering. But I think you do have to follow other people's methods initially. You know, so I think organic weathering.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, like I think to be honest, that's how we've all done it, haven't we? You know, you've seen how somebody else has done it in a magazine, a video, or whatever it's been in a book, and you know, we've tried it out. And I think that's the thing, like we say with every part of modelling, is that you find your way of doing it. You know, some people might follow exactly the way, you know, and keep it exactly, and it works perfectly for them. But a lot of the times with me, I might have seen a technique or been shown a technique or told about a technique, and I'll give it a whirl, and then I'll think, yeah, but I think if you was to do it this way, and it's still, that's the technique you're using, but you've just put your curve onto it so it works in the way you like it, and that's the thing. But you know, but again, like we've said with all weathering techniques, it's like everything in modelling, isn't it? It's practice. You know, as you say, you know, you can go right down to basics of, say, dry brushing, which I think is probably one of the first things. I did it on the chassis of this. We gave it a metallic scrub. You know, it's like dry brushing, understanding how dry brushing works. It's practice. You can talk about it. You just add paint, rub it all off, and brush it lightly over your model. But to do it properly, it takes a little bit of time, understanding about where you're going, where you're starting, and like how much is on your brush, and building it up and various things, the angles, the directions. This is all stuff you learn, which is the same with any type of weathering, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark says, hi all, born again noob, nobody's a newbie, I hate that word, I hate the word noob, modeler here. What would be the best way of showing salt wear corrosion effect on navy planes? Would you use standard chipping methods? Oh God, what, like perhaps on a Corsair? No, let's not go down there. Or is this another method? Oh yeah, definitely use another method to show off the abrasion, like on the leading edges, cowls, etc. Again, you know, you're into this thing now about, you know, saltwater corrosion. As I say, it's like chipping and eating at paintwork and various things like it. There's lots of different ways of doing it, and everybody has their own personal way. To be honest, my favorite way, because I get more control over it, because I've been bitten by it going horrendously wrong many a time, is to use a sponge and a little bit of like dark metallics to do chipping, or very light chipping. So if you go back and look at the Hellcat 48 scale Hellcat, I did it all around the leading edges of the wings and around the cowling and everything on that one, to give you what I thought was my effect for it, rather than actually using salt chipping, which doesn't work for me, clearly. See the Corsair video, 30-second scale Corsair, and the outtake videos for it as well. But again, that's one of those ones where chipping has come a bit of a long way. In the old days, it was rock salt, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's literally salt.
Or Marmite. People used to use Marmite. I've never understood that one. But it's rock salt or Marmite. Now, though, the clever boffins have come up with chipping fluids or hairspray techniques and things like that. But back in the old day, it was like rock salt, lightly spritz your model, tip some rock salt on it, let it dry, then paint it, and then scrub it all off, and it will look horrible like mine did.
See, I've used rock salt quite a few times, and I've always found it all right. Never had any troubles with it.
I think I go over the top. That's my trouble.
Probably it. Like Phil said, I think if you're new to it, you want something easy. Piece of sponge.
Yes.
Make sure it's like a nice piece of rough with and after you've done a bit, move it around and so you're changing the pattern on it so it's not the same all over. You sometimes see people use the corner of a sponge and it's the same corner on every single bit of the aircraft. It looks completely uniform across the thing. It looks like it looks silly. Move it around, rip it up, move it around and do it. But then you can go on to hairspray technique using use a cheap hairspray.
Yes, the cheapest you can find.
Yeah, and a couple of quick wafts over of it, let it dry, paint your top coat on, then a wet brush and and chip away at it and and it brings it out. It's just playing around. Use a buster.
Yes.
Try it on a buster and try different techniques.
Because again, this is I've been bitten so many times doing salt technique. Now, if I'm doing this type of work, this is literally just a sponge, and again a torn sponge, and just keep changing it and rotating it, and you're just gently tapping at it. The video is on this one anyway. You can see about it going through, just bring this in, and we used it on other areas down the back end and everything. But the front of the cowling, it works for me. Again, this is one of those things we're talking about, how it will work for you. So perhaps, you might have seen somebody else do it and it works for them, a different technique. But I seem to have more control over using a sponge because I know exactly where it's going. So when I'm just tapping at it, you can just put it all in those little areas. So the bit where you're thinking, do you know what, I think we're overdoing it here. That's the bit you're sort of, right, okay, we're going to stop and move away. And
you see people use a brush, don't you, and do it, and I can't do it with a brush. My mind... It's too uniform.
Absolutely. If you've got OCD, you can't do it because you end up trying to unify. I've got one there, I need one here, and before you know it, you've just got these perfect chips that are lined up.
It just doesn't look right.
I must admit, I saw a guy, got to be a couple of years ago now. He was doing chipping on a tank. And he was doing it with the brush, as you say, and he's like, oh, we'll just make this random thing here. And I couldn't watch. It was like painful. My OCD was like, oh, God, no, stop. How does he do it so random? What is this black magic that this man's using? I don't understand. Personally, my OCD is like, will not allow that type of thing. And I think that's what it is. If you're good and random and you can do this and you put them all in. But I must admit, my mind doesn't work that way. I try and unify everything. So...
There is something that you can do what I like with weathering is reversible weathering.
Yes.
So I do my chipping with enamels. Mm-hmm. So if it goes a bit too much, I can literally get some enamel thinners and take it off. But I use the sponge for the big blotches, and then I come in within it with pencils, smaller scratches and chips.
And again, if we're talking about scratching and chipping, and I will do some videos about this, once these builds are out of the way, I'm going to take a month or maybe 2 months off and just going to do these. But again, chipping is one of those things where people will just do a chip, but chips in reality are never just a chip, are they? It's normally you might have primer. It might have gone right the way through the primer and down into the next primer. And the primers may be different colours. So you might have yellow primers, and then you've got green primers, then you've got the paint, and then you might have different colours of paint through that as well. So again, this is the thing as well. When you are doing chipping and various things, it's very easy just to say, oh, I'm just going to put a chip here and maybe a metal colour. But the reality is it's got to probably go through perhaps 3 or 4 coats of paint before you're going to ever get to metal. So you need to sort of recreate that as well. If you look at chipping, ISO containers are the best weathering thing you can get. Have a look at ISO containers and you'll see how they chip, dent, bleed and everything. And they're readily available everywhere these days. And you can see how chipping really works. And I think Jamie's got some pictures in his books and the things he's done where you've actually got reference shots, which are great. So have a look at rusty things, have a look at chipped things, and it may be farmyard equipment, it may be a car, it may be whatever. Take a photo of it and you've got that as a reference of how chipping actually really looks. and not perhaps how you think it would look on a model. So by getting that depth of like different primer coats, different colours of rustiness, different types of metal effects as well, because again, everybody usually goes in with silver, and silver's just too strong. To be honest, I saw a plane the other day and they've done great chipping work if it was polished metal underneath, but clearly it wouldn't be, you know. So again, it sort of ruined it because it was so strong and in your face, and you want it to be, you can see the chipping, but it's like flat alley or whatever it is underneath it, rather than being really, really bright, you know, and polished, because it, you know, the reality is they're never like that.
Yeah, good trick is to use greys or even a lighter shade of the top colour.
Yes.
Rather than going in with just plain metallic paints.
One good thing to look at is look at lorry trailers.
Yes.
Also
That's another good one. No. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, the lorry the cabs are kept pristine, but the trailers, they get bashed forklifts and stone chips and all sorts on them, and you can see the way they wear. That's all like the same way as armour and those sort of things would wear. Sort of like they're given a coat of paint that's not very thick and so chips off easy. Good way of looking at things and what have you.
Unfortunately, there isn't many cars driving around these days that are absolute heaps.
Not cars, no.
They've sort of gone these days. Most of my cars as a youth were like that.
Holes in them and
Anyway, Carlos says, hi gang, any thoughts on doing a weathering series like the one Phil did on airbrush, something that the whole team could collaborate on, with each of you doing a session on a specific technique like chipping, washes, post shading, oils, etc. I think this will be invaluable for all us new to the whole weathering world and provide a great foundation and education for the poor noobs or newer modelers to the weathering genre. Thoughts? I think that's great, Carlos, and it's something I will talk to the guys when they're down here tomorrow.
Definitely. It is something we've sort of done before Saturday show.
Yes, Saturday shows.
It was never a standalone thing, was it? But we could do it as a standalone thing where each of us does a technique and then Phil can put it up.
Yeah, definitely. But as I said, I'm going to take, because obviously the trouble is the builds, I want to get on with them, if that sounds silly. So the idea of like clearing this all away and doing sort of demoing and that type of thing, it sort of horrifies me. But what I'm going to do, when both of these are out of the way, I will go through, take a couple of months out. I'm going to concentrate on doing all of these. So I'll get the guys involved with it as well, even if I do them as recordings, as we're all together and everything else like that. So, but definitely, because the great thing about all of us as a group, we've all got our own ways of doing it. We don't all have the same techniques, as you've probably seen. If you've watched any of the Saturday shows, we've literally got 100 ways of skinning a cat, and we all have our own certain techniques and ways of doing it. And that's what we're saying. I've often said this, is that don't take my word as gospel the way I do anything. Everybody has their own ways. You might see me do something and it just doesn't work for you. You might see Nathan do it and you get on well with it, and then Andy will show you a way and it'll click. And that's the great thing with it as well. So definitely be one of those things. But we are planning on doing it. As I say, I just need to allocate some time to this and get to it and get it all sorted. So watch this space, definitely. Jordan says, hi guys, I'm currently working on a Maltese Spitfire. It's a Malteser. I was wondering how to add the lead fuel stains on the fuselage where the petrol has been leaking from the refueled by hand and has dried in the sun. These colour plates give you an idea of the effect. So yes, that's the ones. I always think the Spit looks great with the trot on it, the actual air scoop underneath. Yeah. Makes it look really meaty, doesn't it? It's like the Jimmy Hill of Spitfires now.
To me, it's hard to see on those pictures, but especially on the bottom one, you can see because they have the fuel filler cap on the top of the cowling, don't they?
Yeah, in front of the pilots. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and you can exactly. Yeah. You can see the white streaking coming down.
Yeah, it's these areas here, and obviously these here.
Yeah, and nowadays I'd be going with the AK pencils, greys and whites. Maybe not whites, but sort of greys. Yeah, and sort of like, and you can put them on, sort of use water and sort of wet them in and sort of like, drag it down and stain it all. Oils, to
be honest, that would be my way. I quite like, you do the thing where you can just, if you want to do a leak, if you pre-do the area with like enamel thinners, so you just put a brush full on it, okay, and then you make a thick wash, and then just tap it on and let it run down. Because it's already pre-wetted, it will go south anyway. So it will give that, and just let it dry. Naturally let it dry. It's one of those things, let gravity do all the work, and let it just fall back on its own.
If you want it streaking back a bit, just hold your aircraft up a bit so it's
absolutely, yeah. But Spitfire was better thinking about it. Didn't that had a firewall, wouldn't it? It had a bulkhead. It's the Hurricane didn't it? Wasn't it the Hurricane? Literally, you could see he put his feet through the fuel tank. Could be wrong. Sorry if I am speaking out here. Sorry, I can't remember. I thought it was the Spitfire had a full bulkhead, but the Hurricane didn't. So that's why the Hurricane, if you had a fire in a Hurricane, you had a fuel tank fire, you really had a problem very quickly. At least with the Spitfire, you had a chance of getting out whilst not being on fire. So I don't know. I could be completely wrong. I'll shut up now because I probably am. But yeah, with the light wash work, yeah, of course you could use the light wash. What I would do is, if you saw it with when I worked on the Cobra, do the same. If you get a little bit of white wash, just put it on your cutting mat, just a couple of drops, let it dry out. And then you can use it like dry or as a really thick, just add a little bit of water to it and it'll be really thick, and you can actually paint it. It'll go like paint then. Once the water's all come off, it gets very thick, goes like paint. But if you just put a little bit on your cutting mat, let it start to dry out, and then sort of just before it totally does, give it a bit of a mix, you can really streak it. And that's, to be honest, what we did on the Cobra to give weathered streaky effects, because to be honest, I couldn't get the pencils to work still. John, look, do you need a moment? Grab your tissues, John.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We were looking at this last night.
To be honest, I was talking to Matt about this morning. Doesn't that just want to make you go out and get a Hockham? Who's got the conversion kit? Have you got it, John?
Yeah, in there somewhere.
Right. Do you want to sell it?
Matt's got one in the shop, hasn't he?
No, because that's it.
No,
Apparently-
I thought Matt got one as well.
No, Matt gave it to John.
Did he?
No, I bought mine.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So Matt's got one. Right.
Sean's
Mr.
one
Ball,
sat
I'm
on the
coming
shelf
after
in the shop.
you because I saw this and it was like, Jesus, that's it. I just want to build one tomorrow. So for people who don't know, this is the alligator. What's the designation on this one, John?
KA-52
Here you go.
alligator.
So look, how cool is that? This thing has actually got ejector seats. It's the deck cord, so it blows the blades off, the coaxials, and then you eject. It's fantastic. Anyway, now we've got to get the tissues out. Right. Oh, there you go. So it's the KA-52. Similar to the photo below, I've got a couple of questions for the team. One, how would you weather the model to have the heavy bleached effect on the KA-52? So for me, and then the others want to jump in, I would just paint it normally in obviously the grey, and then I would just fade out the grey and then post shade it back in. Yeah. And then obviously for the darky bits around here, like we've been discussing this evening, I would probably use an oil wash and going over it with oil so it bleaches and it fades and it goes in and out of everywhere. And you can build them up. Don't think oils is like one and done. You put one coat, let it dry, come back and just build them up and go through. Don't know. What about you guys?
Yeah, that's just shouting oil, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the bit under the cockpit where it's really grimy. I'd be wondering if you put the dark dirt wash on and sand it off.
Yeah, to be honest, this is a great one for sanding off if no one's seen it before. If you put the wash over a sort of satin finish or even flat, if you sand it off, it gives a really grubby look. The photos I showed earlier, the B-52, that's how we do that effect. And, you know, it gives a really worn look. But this is proper bleached out on the back end, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apart from the fiberglass radome, that hasn't.
You could spend days and days and days just modulating with different greys, couldn't you? Just to break it up into like, you know.
Yeah, because there's probably 100 colours going through here.
Yeah.
You know? But that is uber cool.
If you look at the tailplane bit, that's almost like a real dark charcoal grey.
Yeah, it's got the centre bit in here, isn't it, as well, which looks like probably a repaint maybe in there.
Does look cool though, doesn't it?
But that's what we love about Russian stuff, isn't it? Is that, you know, let's face it, it always fades because of their environment, and then obviously it has touch-ups and various leakages and things, and it just makes them, they just look so cool.
And the thing is as well, you could see that parked on a flight line, and that could be parked next to another one that's virtually pristine.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
See, this breaks one of the rules of weathering, is you weather it and then you put your decals on afterwards. Look at the 67.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. This tail one, I reckon these have been recently painted, and they've repainted that tail, then put the 67 down in the back there.
Yeah, because normally you weather the decals in, but
Yeah,
not
normally
this
they're
time.
faded and chipped, but they're quite pristine. You're quite right.
Like you said, then the nose ain't got a chip on it, has it?
No. Well,
But
that'll be fiberglass anyway, isn't
Yeah.
it? So anyway, it just says about the suitable colour for the nose. Well, again, it's fiberglassy, so it's always a problem. Maybe starting off with something like an XF 18.
So we were talking about
To be honest, we were looking at it last night, and you can look at different photos and see different colours.
Well, because that's fiberglass for you, though, isn't it? They all change
Because
really quick.
That looks quite a sort of bluey green. There's a
Yeah.
green tinge to it.
Yeah.
Where others it just looks light blue.
Yeah. Because John was like looking at one photo and he was saying it was that blue green. I was looking at another photo and I said it looks almost like XF23. But it's because we were looking at different photos that had faded differently and it was just.
Yeah. The thing is, like we
Yeah.
said before, the trouble is when you look at radomes, I had that photo. You remember a couple of years ago now, I put it up. Was a flight line of F-15s that I took. Every single one of them was a different colour. And then the one closest clearly was off of a Strike Eagle because it was really dark grey. They'd done it in gunship grey, where all the others were really light. And one of them, it looks like it was fiberglass. It was literally bleached completely. But obviously, apparently it happens a lot. They pinch the noses and they take them round. So obviously they'd taken it was on F-15C. They put an F-15E's nose on it because they're the same. Because it was completely a gunship grey colour, where all the others were grey. And that one it was the only one in the line, but it was interesting because you had 6 of them in a line. Every single one was a different colour, and that's because they could be in fiberglass as well. They do bleach out.
I'll tell you what, though, rejecting out that thing, there's too many things for sod's law to me to.
And you would hope they've all gone by the time you come out, isn't it?
Or you come out and when they've all gone.
The thing is, I often think, I'm not being funny, yeah, those types of helicopters work map of the earth, isn't it? So normally they're at treetop height. So if things are going wrong and you've got to eject, you've only got, 20, 40 feet quick to do it. You haven't got long to think about getting out, have you? So by the time you've been hit that you need to eject, you're probably on the ground anyway. But very cool.
It's a shame Kitty Hawk went the way they did, because that was one of their next planned releases.
Yes.
They had the box art and everything, but it cancelled.
Yeah.
Have you had any updates from your guest yet, John?
No.
He's going to come through your door in a minute, isn't he?
I am waiting for him, but I stopped now, but it was absolutely tipping down just now.
Oh, right. So our special guest is going to come in through your shed door in a minute.
I'm waiting for it.
Okay, Peter says, evening gents. What time we got? Oh, look, one more, then we'll carry these over to next week. Evening gents, it was Francisco Valinden that opened my eyes to detailing and weathering back in the 80s. Loved his books and how adding bits of strip and rod to sprues and cockpits to improve things. It was fairly distinctive weathering style. When Italeri had build kits in their 135th kit boxes back then, it was by Valinden. Weathering has become a lot easier since acrylics have taken off. Flory washes are a godsend, but there's so much weathering related stuff now available. So ignore the bulk of this question. Could have put that at the beginning. My question is, how do you decide when enough is enough when weathering? That's my thing on my shoulder that says you're about to screw this up. I'd stop if I was you. It's going really well.
Yeah.
Let's not ruin it.
It's a purely personal thing, isn't it?
I think you just know. But
Yeah.
then sometimes you don't. It's like drinking in a pub. You have 1 pint too many and you ruin yourself.
True.
But sometimes you just
Yeah,
know when
We'll
to
find that out tomorrow night, shall we?
Tomorrow night's going to be that night. I think you just know, don't you? I think I've often sort of had a build where I'm like, oh, it's done. How'd
Yes.
that happen?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Can we just answer the next question as well?
Okay. Hold
My
on.
question: whether to weather is a question. Is whether to or to weather is the question. Sorry, I couldn't just that. My only problem with that is first weather is spelt wrong.
Yeah.
I hope. because it should be WHETHER,
Yeah.
or that weather is a castrated ram.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
My problem is, how do you know that?
Google.
I'm a literally scholar.
I'm more worried that you know that's the name for a castrated ram.
I googled it.
Oh, right. You Googled it to know if you'd spelt that wrong, and he's come up with a castrated
I knew he
ram.
spelled it wrong. I just started wondering what actually he had, what he had spelt. Was it another word? It is another word, but it's a castrated ram. So I'm not quite sure whether he meant to put the castrated ram or he actually spelled it wrong. I'm hoping he spelled it wrong.
Oh well, whichever way, we all now have learnt something this evening, and that's a castrated ram is spelt a weather. So thanks for that. We'll be good for that one when we're all going. Who wants to be a millionaire? Anyway, guys, we will call it right there. Obviously, up to date as well. There was the review for the Contash, which is a V12. I'd like to point out, even though it looks like. So somebody tell us why it's only got 6 pots? Did they? This is the only bit I want to know. Did they put 2 pistons in each pot? Because on the kit it only shows it as like 6 pots. So that's why I thought it was a V6. But generally, okay, it is a V12 because a few people have mentioned it. About 15 of you. But my point is, does it have 2 pistons in one pot? I'm not saying it's not a V12 because clearly it is, because you guys know more than me. But did they put 2 pistons in one pot? That was the question.
Can I just quickly answer Roger? Yeah, Roger. Yeah, you can get full tracks to tracks for Challenger 2. We're from Tri-Hannants. Or you can buy them directly from Frull.
Yes. You can see them.
Hey?
And a Challenger tank, you can't see the tracks, can you?
Not much, just the front and rear.
Yeah,
it's got the side skirts.
Depends. Yeah, with the side skirts on, especially if it's a desert one with side
skirts.
Yeah,
with the little furry bits on the bottom as well. You don't see anything.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of most of it. I mean, I did the Trumpeter Challenger 1. And I didn't bother with any aftermarkets on that because you don't see them at all. But yeah, but you can get them, definitely. You can get them Frull. I bet there's probably others that do them, but Frull are probably the easiest ones to get hold of.
Cool.
Tri-Hannants, probably the best place to start.
Yes, very good. Right, okay, so tomorrow up with you, we've got the next part of the Vulcan. That will be up with you, which basically talks about sanding. Filling and sanding of how to get seamless, beautiful flat edges and stuff. I had a couple of people ask me about sanding questions and stuff like that. That will answer all of your questions beautifully. So that will be up with you in the morning, no doubt, before this motley crew arrive. Okay, so that will be up with you. And then what we're planning on doing is somewhat of a show tomorrow afternoon. So when all the guys are here, at some point, maybe later, maybe sooner, but it will be a recording anyway. Well, it will go up as a watch afterwards, so you will be able to see it if you don't watch this live, but we'll probably do it live because I won't have time to edit it. So it will be a little special Friday show with everybody that's here.
Depending on how round it is depending on how much side we've had.
Yes, probably. So God help us.
It was got 70 pints to get through and just found out that John's welching off for one night, so
yeah, this is
Hey, I'll still be drinking. I don't have to drive home.
No, that's it. So anyway, so at some point tomorrow we will be on, but I don't know when it was. By the time all the guys get here, it's probably going to be late afternoon, depending obviously on the traffic. And then obviously we'll get all the guys in here. We'll do a bit of a show for a bit, and then we'll be hitting the drink and the takeaway shop. Barbecues tomorrow. Barbecues on Saturday. So yes. Good job. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's an absolute pleasure as always. We will obviously see you tomorrow, or if not, we will see you next week as we make our way on as normal. So, anything else to say, Andy? Are we all good?
Yeah, all good.
All good. Lovely job. Thank you very much.
Check out the just check out the new pre-orders.
Yes. Sorry. Hold on. We got a couple of new pre-orders that went up today. Very important ones. Sorry. Hold on. Where's PM? So we got the prices in. So now we got the Valiant pre-order. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Might help you guys because we've got the Valiants on a pre-order as well. Just £44.54.
Nice
for those.
Vulcan.
So yeah, go along with your Vulcan. So they're back in, and obviously the vampire.
Yeah. 3
Vampire.
market options as well.
And again, there may be a reason why people might want to get the earlier versions of this one. Just saying. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave that there. And it's not like clickbaity either. It's genuine. So yes. Anyway, and obviously the Cobra, which we spoke about as well, for if you want to do the deckled shark mouth or paint one on by hand like I did, that's on there as well. So yes, good job. Okie dokie. We'll cover some more of those tomorrow anyways, make our way through.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully Mr. Bull will be turning up at Mr. Buller's any second as he falls through the door, complaining he needs the loo, knowing him.
Yeah.
So yes, we will see you obviously all tomorrow, guys. Happy modelling, take care. We will see you all very, very soon. Where's my clappy thing? There it is. Goodbye. No, wrong one.